Warm welcomes to you all on this very special day in Russia. You're watching RT International with me, Nikki Aaron. Now, Russia is celebrating Victory Day today, marking the defeat of Nazi Germany. This day marks the 73rd anniversary of the end of the Great Patriotic War, which claimed the lives of over 26 million Soviet people. Let's take you live now to central Moscow, where the parade is about to get underway. Now in central Moscow, people are observing a minute's silence to honor those who lost their lives in the Great Patriotic War. We have our correspondents covering all angles of the parade today. We can now go to Rory Souchet, who is right on Red Square for us. We've also got Igor Zhdanov, who has a bird's-eye view of the military hardware rolling past. Also, Daniel Hawkins is right outside the Kremlin. Let's go to Rory first. Rory, what's happening where you are right now?
Well, Nikki, you really couldn't have asked for a more beautiful day here on Moscow's iconic Red Square to mark 73 years, as you said, since the victory over Nazism, fascism, the successful end of the Great Patriotic War, 1941 to 1945. We are readying ourselves now for the marching regiments who will soon be trotting across Red Square here in downtown central Moscow. There will be a lot of new weapons of war on debut today in the skies above us and cruising across the cobbled stones of Red Square. New armoured personnel carriers, new tanks, and of course the new avant-garde hypersonic missile delivery platform that'll be on display in the skies over Moscow today. Just to say, 27 or 28 million Soviets lost their lives during the Great Patriotic War. So today, marking the 73rd anniversary of the end of the war, we are paying our respects and homage to those who lost their lives, but also for those who remain with us today. And as Nikki said, our correspondents are positioned from all the great viewpoints around Red Square. For me, Rory Souchet, for now, back to you as our live coverage continues.
Thanks for that, Rory. Showing you on our screens right now, we have President Putin greeting and meeting some of the people there on Red Square today. We're going to be bringing you all of this live coverage throughout the morning, so do stay with us. Let's go to our correspondent, Igor Zhdanov, now, who's keeping an eye on the military hardware there. Igor, what can you see from where you are?
Well, Nikki, any minute now, the military vehicles behind me will be starting their engines. Well, basically, once Vladimir Putin greets and sort of accepts the parade, they will begin rolling on their way over there towards the Red Square. We can sort of overhear what's going on there. They're, of course, talking about the veterans, about all those who lost their lives and those who lived through the war to see the parade of today, of course. They're thanking the veterans, and of course it is for the Russians, it's a day of remembrance. In terms of the military vehicles, more than 100 machines in total are participating today. They include both veterans like the legendary T-34 tank, which basically all but won the war for the Soviets in the 1945. But also there will be some newer hardware. Some of it we've already seen, like, for example, the S-400 missile defense, anti-air missile defense systems, or like the Armata tank, for example, which is just over there behind me. But also there will be some newer additions to this parade too. This includes Russia's unmanned drones, which are being unveiled for the first time, really, at this year's parade. They can carry bombs while being developed as a reconnaissance vehicle. Also, tank support units, like, for example, the one called Terminator. So the S-Terminator will be rolling onto the Red Square. But
okay,
really,
Igor,
now the parade is about to kick off, so I'm handing it back to you, Nikki.
Thanks, Igor. At 10 o'clock Moscow time, the Spasskaya clock will strike 10. This traditionally kicks off the parade. Let's go to live pictures now to see what's happening on Red Square.
государственный флаг Российской Федерации и знамя Победы. Смирно! Для встречи слева! Накра!
Музыку песни Александрова «Священная война» военнослужащие батальона почетного караула 154-й
Anton Mikhailov and Junior Sergeant Alexei Fokeev of the Honor Guard Battalion, the 154th Preobrazhensky Independent Commandant's Regiment, carry the state flag of the Russian Federation and the victory banner into Red Square. The color guard crews are led by Major Maxim Malakov and Captain Alexei Ruklenko.
OK, we just watched the soldiers marching there with their extreme precision, stunning and incredibly symbolic. I'm very lucky that I have independent military expert Sergei Lebedev in the studio with me today to talk us through the parade. Tell us more about the kind of preparation that goes into this kind of parade. We know we've had rehearsals over the days preceding the parade. We do it every year. What's so significant and special about this parade this year?
Before we start talking about this, I'd like to extend my congratulations to all veterans all over the world who fought on the battlefields of the Second World War and in the Great Patriotic War of 1941-1945, and pay my respect to them. As far as the preparation of troops towards the parade is concerned, well, it's a tough exercise, and they start doing this maybe 3 months before. And I myself participated in that kind of exercise in the city of Odessa.
Wow, it's not just a beautiful parade to go and watch. It's so important and so symbolic to the people of Russia. It's a public holiday today in Russia, and most families will be going there. What will be their feelings today?
Well, it's really a very great and important holiday for every Russian family, because so many people perished in that war of 1941-1945. About 26 million lives were claimed, and every family has someone who lost or perished or was killed. These are really very, very tough feelings for every family. Of course, there is joy, but you will find a lot of tears in the eyes of ordinary citizens.
Very, very poignant day for everybody here in Russia today. So lucky I have you in the studio with me, though, to talk us through it. Let's go to our correspondent, Daniel Hawkins, now, who has the privilege of being there close to Red Square. Daniel, can you tell us more about what you can see right now?
Well, Nikki, as you can probably see behind me, numerous tanks and armoured vehicles are lined up. Just beyond the camera's reach there, I can see columns of vehicles holding banners from World War II, from the Great Patriotic War, all set to begin their journey through the Manezhnaya Square, past the Military History Museum and onto Red Square itself. As you were saying, and Mr. Lebedev was saying there, such an emotional day, such a personal day for many Russians, so many families affected by the war. Pretty much every family has ancestors, has relatives either dead or still living that made a contribution to that great victory. Also a very special day today indeed, because it's also the centenary of the founding of the Red Army back in 1918 after the Russian Revolution, of course, and also the anniversary of the victory in the Battle of Stalingrad, modern-day Volgograd, of course, in southern Russia. That was one of the key battles of the Great Patriotic War, one of the biggest, the most bloody battles, which really was a turning point not only on the Eastern Front in the Russian fight against Nazi Germany, but overall in the Second World War. My great-grandfather fought and died also in one of the battles under Stalingrad, so very poignant day personally for myself here as well. It's very much also about the military technology, as you said there, Nikki, as the guest was saying. Numerous new hardware on display, from drones for the first time ever to unmanned vehicles, robotic vehicles, of course some new aircraft and tanks as well. But really it's about the people here. There's less and less veterans from World War II attending, very sadly, every year, of course, but they have the place of honor, as you can might be able to see on your TV screens there in the VIP sector. It's all about them. Of course, today, and later there will be a procession of other people, of family members, who will be holding up photographs, portraits of their loved ones, of their ancestors who fought, many of whom died during the Great Patriotic War as well. Any minute now, Nikki, will have that procession just behind the camera. They're beginning to move through the Manezhnaya Square to Red Square, and of course, when that happens, we'll bring you full coverage just meters away from where it's all going to happen.
Daniel, thank you for that. As you said, a very personal day for many people, for most people attending this parade today. Let's go back to our guest now, Mr. Lebedev. Can you tell us what's happening on our screens right now? Talk us through the procession.
Well, now the troops are just ready for the march, and the defense minister is greeting the soldiers and officers who are lined up on the Red Square. He's moving in a special vehicle from one regiment to another, and the troops in return would shout "Hooray!" That's something which is part of the military manuals and the military procedures. That's it.
And Daniel was saying that the veterans, those who actually fought in the Second World War, they have pride of place. They're in the VIP section, but it's very sad that each year there's fewer and fewer of those that remain. This day really is about showing respect for those veterans, isn't it?
Yeah, special places are specifically prepared for them next to the building of the mausoleum. And most of them are just beyond the age of 90 years of age. So very, very, very few of them left alive. So unfortunately, that's the case.
Daniel touched upon there the battle for Leningrad, which took place from 1941 to 1943, and the blockade of Leningrad, which was particularly severe. 872 days of mass starvation there. Let's go back to the parade now and show our viewers what's happening right now in central Moscow.
Стать на защиту своего народа и целостности государства.
The defense minister is now greeting the Navy regiment and the cadets of the Suvorov Academy.
73-й годовщиной победы в Великой Отечественной войне.
The defense minister has greeted the parade formations of the Army, Navy, Airborne Troops, Western Military District, Strategic Missile Forces, Railway Troops, and Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Protection Troops, as well as the parade formations of the National Guard, Ministry of the Emergencies, Federal Security Service, and the cadets of Suvorov and Nakhimov academies. The inspection
May the 9th in Russia has become such a huge symbolic day, one of the most important dates in the Russian calendar. But actually, a lot of people don't know is that the first Victory Day parade in 1945 actually wasn't in May, was it?
No, it happened in June, at least in Moscow, because troops and the leadership of the country needed time to get ready for such an enormous event, an important event. And Stalin decided to choose the day in June to stage this event.
Okay, let's go back to the parade now, because President Putin is about to address the huge crowds there. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Citizens of Russia, dear veterans, soldiers and sailors, sergeants and ensigns, Army and Navy officers, generals and admirals, Happy Victory Day. This is a holiday that has always been and will always be the most sacred holiday to every family, to our entire great country. This is a holiday that makes our entire nation proud and will always be remembered. 73 years ago, the Great Patriotic War ended. Nazism was defeated. We put an end to cruelty and barbarity. We defeated the criminal plans of world superiority. The defeat of Nazism was a real triumph. This long-awaited word made its way around the planet, and all the nations realized that it was the Soviet Union that determined the outcome of World War II. It was our soldiers, our people, who achieved this victory by offering their sacrifice. They defended the freedom and independence of their country, showing unparalleled courage on the front lines and on the home front. Today, what those soldiers did is sometimes forgotten or distorted. The real heroes are being forgotten, and history is being rewritten. We will never allow this to happen. It is our duty to preserve the memory of the valor of soldiers who gave their lives for others, all of our soldiers, those who fought on the second front, what other countries did, members of the anti-Hitler coalition. We will always be proud that the Soviet people did not back down, while some other countries preferred to capitulate, were hypocritical, and collaborated with the Nazis. Our people fought hard. No other country in the world faced an invasion like that, evacuating millions of people, thousands of factories under fire, and immediately those factories started manufacturing armor and hardware for the troops. This seemed impossible, but people worked selflessly, women and children. They worked for their motherland. They worked for the victory. For those who defended the country and their families, nothing can measure the valor of our soldiers and marshals. They fought hard, and every spot was part of their motherland. Every little piece of land they treated as the most important one. We achieved decisive victories in Moscow and Stalingrad, at Kursk and on the Dnieper River. We broke the Leningrad blockade. We liberated the capitals of Europe and eventually took Berlin. All of that, it did not matter which ethnic group or religion you belong to, where you used to live, where you came from. All those soldiers had just one motherland. They all fought to the bitter end, to the last drop of their blood. May 9th unites all the generations. It's the history of courage. Every family has its own heroes, and they continue living today as part of the immortal regiment. We bow our heads to cherish the memory of all those who did not return from the war. We remember our sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, grandfathers, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, family members, and friends. We mourn the veterans who are no longer with us. I ask for a minute of silence. Friends, in June 1941, war came to every family. It separated husbands and wives, some of them forever. It left hundreds of thousands of children without parents, destroyed the hopes and plans, turned cities and villages to ashes. War is always a challenge to life. All the best things in life. We remember the tragedies of 2 world wars. We remember the lessons of history. This is what keeps us from becoming blind. We see new threats, but behind them we see old features of selfishness, nationalism, and exceptionalism. We understand how serious those threats are. The entire mankind has to realize that that peace is very fragile. We all should hear each other, respect each other. Russia is open to dialogue on all the different matters of global security. We are ready for a constructive and equal partnership for the sake of peace and stability on the planet. Dear veterans, our gratitude to you is limitless. This is what our hearts cry out about. To honor you, we'll have this military parade. Your life, burned by war, is a role model for all the generations. We admire your dedication to the motherland. It is a great honor for us to be your descendants. We realize how great this responsibility is. We will never let you down. We are proud of what you accomplished, and this is what makes us stronger. Today, we have a new generation of victors marching through Russia's main square. We will always remain faithful to your traditions. We will continue working hard, being successful for Russia's prosperity and greatness. The light of your victories, your courage will make us stronger. Happy Victory Day! Hurrah! Hurrah!
President Putin there addressing the parade, followed by Russia's national anthem and the shooting of cannons there. Incredibly poignant words spoken by President Putin there, who said that Victory Day will always be the most sacred holiday to our great country, and also it's a great honor for us to be your descendants. Sergei, maybe you have a personal story you can tell us. We understand that in the Soviet Union, every family lost someone special to them. What's your experience?
Well, I would like to take this opportunity and tell you about the story about my grandfather, who actually participated in most important battles of the Great Patriotic War. He defended Moscow, he took part in the Kursk battle, and he fought his last battle in Lithuania. And actually his self-propelled gun mount was hit by a German tank on the 17th of October of 1944. And as in many cases, sometimes it was very difficult even to find the place where the crew was buried. And that is actually the story which touches upon many families in Russia. 3 years ago, we found the place in Lithuania, and Actually, they put the names of the crew on the memorial, and that's how the story ended. And a family of Lithuanians was living next to that memorial. They were very friendly, and every time I come there, they welcome us there, offer some tea and snacks. And that's a good feeling, you know.
Yeah, incredible. The end of the Second World War really did bring many countries together. Let's go to our correspondent now, Rory Suchet. You're on Red Square for us. You're very lucky to be witnessing the parade firsthand. Can you tell us more about what's happening right now?
Well, as we are standing by for the parade to really kick off here, Nikki, on the iconic Red Square, the Russian President Vladimir Putin just made a very, very moving speech discussing the history in the past 73 years, celebrating the lives lost in the Great Patriotic War, celebrating the lives of the soldiers who are still with us today, but also, equally importantly, celebrating the lives of all the families affected. As our commentator, Mr. Lebedev, said, there was barely a single Soviet family left unaffected by the aggressions in that of the Great Patriotic War. Interesting, the Russian President Vladimir Putin mentioned towards the end of his speech that Russia is still open to dialogue. It is still open to constructive work with its professional partners. Obviously, he's citing the current geopolitical climate around the world. Now, after Putin has just wrapped up his speech, now all the marching bands will be getting underway across the time-worn cobbles of the iconic Red Square. 34 regiments in all, 13,000 servicemen and women marching across Red Square. Some of the youngest cadets from the very famous Sufrovs Academy will be here as well. Many of the youngest cadets of the Kremlin Cadet Force here as well. Their job to protect the Kremlin, to protect the national treasures, state officials, but also to protect that of the eternal flame just a little way behind me outside Red Square, that of at the tomb of the unknown soldier. So we're seeing all types here today. Before we get to the big heavy equipment, the megaton tank structures to roll across the square here, the marching bands get underway with marching bands from all corners of the vast expanse of the Russian Federation. So now, although we show our respects to those affected by the Great Patriotic War, we must also remember this is a day of victory and celebration, to celebrate those of all those affected by the war, but also we gear up for the big ones, the big heavy tanks, the S-400 and the armored personnel carriers now about to start coming across Red Square after the marching regiments.
Rory Suchet there reporting live from Red Square as the parade gets underway. As you said, many people will be taking part in this parade today. 12,500 military personnel taking part, in fact. Sergei, perhaps you can talk us through what we're seeing on our screens right now.
Yeah, we see the Navy regiment marching through the Red Square. It's a great honor for the soldiers and officers to participate in this parade, and the best ones were chosen for that. Here we see a column of Suvorov Cadet School. They traditionally take part, and actually those are the children, and these are the Naval Nakhimov School. These are the children of those parents who died in the combat activities or simply who volunteered to participate and become a professional military afterwards, to join military academies when they become grown-ups. Yeah.
Some very fine uniforms, bright colours being shown on the Red Square today. It's quite an exciting day, isn't it, for the young people taking part and also those watching?
Yes, many young people, first of all, they participate in this parade. They have friends and those who are studying in the Nakhimov and Suvorov schools, so lots of spectators would be there, and these are the formations of the so-called Young Army movement, which started a couple of years before. So that is a kind of succession of generations who take part in that event.
Wonderful. Let's give our viewers the full screen now and let them watch the parade.
General Alexei Avdeyev. 2018 marks the 100th anniversary of the Academy. The Academy graduates have always been holding key commanding positions during World War II. 24 Academy graduates served as commanders of 83 armies. The Academy has been awarded 4 military decorations. This is the parade formation of the Military University of the Russian Defense Ministry, led by University Superintendent Major General Igor Mishutkin. The university will soon celebrate its 100th anniversary. For the first time, joining the parade are the formations of the Marshal Vasilevsky Air Defense Academy, led by Academy Principal Lieutenant General Gleb Yeryomin. During the war, 57 Academy graduates were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Today, the Academy produces air defense specialists for different branches of the armed forces. They are followed by the parade formation of the Khrulev Military Logistics Academy, led by its principal, Lieutenant General Andrei Toporov. The Academy produces top military logistics specialists capable of performing various military and humanitarian missions. Joining the parade is the Zhukovsky and Gagarin Air Force Academy, representing Russian Aerospace Forces, led by Academy Principal Lieutenant General Gennady Zibrov. The Academy is the key training center for Air Force pilots, air traffic controllers, military meteorologists, and electronic warfare specialists. Hundreds of the Academy graduates have been awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union and of the Russian Federation. The parade formation of the Mazhaysky Military Space Academy is led by Academy Principal Major General Maxim Penkov.
As the parade gets well underway, our correspondent Daniel Hawkins is right outside the Kremlin. Daniel, you must have an impressive view from where you are.
That's right, Nikki. I can see just beyond the camera's reach, and as you can see also behind me, columns of infantry fighting vehicles, personnel carriers and tanks lined up, set any minute to make a move to Red Square. Traditionally, of course, the parade begins with infantry marching past, many of them holding banners of that World War II Great Patriotic War, as it's known here in Russian era, historic battles of their regiments, of their divisions, etc., marching past the VIP dignitaries and, of course, the veterans who really are the VIPs at this event. The event then morphs into a tank parade, which will, as I say, kick off any minute now. Just to give you some numbers here, the sheer scale of this parade, over 12,000 military personnel, servicemen, servicewomen will march past Red Square, past the Kremlin, the Mausoleum today, alongside 120 vehicles and over 70 aircraft. That, of course, will be the highlight for many here today, the aircraft flying past. one of which will be the Su-57, a new design of Russian fifth-generation fighter aircraft, one of only 2 or 3 such designs in the world. Many will be keeping an eye out for them. Also, the Kinzhal missile, a hypersonic missile unveiled by President Putin back in March, that will be on display here today, alongside a whole array of other weaponry, from robotic vehicles to drones to demining vehicles, all perhaps a symbol of the very much changing, rapidly changing nature of warfare. That is all there to look forward to. As we said earlier, the real heroes here are those veterans who are here today honoured on the VIP section. A very emotional day for many Russians, for all Russians, 9th of May being perhaps the most important festival of the year here, certainly the most cherished, respected and treasured one of all. Any minute now, Nikki, as we said, that column will start moving past me, past Manezhnaya Ploshchad, where I am now, past the Military History Museum and towards the Red Square, where of course you will have a bird's eye view there. I'm sure Mr. Lebedev as well will be able to take us through some of the latest weaponry being on display there. We'll get back to you right when that column gets moving, Nikki, to bring you the latest updates.
We appreciate that. Thank you, Daniel Hawkins. Now, Mr. Lebedev, I remember last year the military aircraft, they didn't make their debut because of the weather conditions. This year, blue skies, looking like it's all on track to happen, right? Because it really is the most impressive and breathtaking part of the parade, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the weather is fine today, and we hope that the aircraft will show up. But I would like to tell you that the general rehearsal for the overflight was cancelled because the day before, that was on the 6th, the skies were very cloudy, and so the commander took the decision not to take risks. Today, I'm sure we'll see it.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed for that. As Daniel was saying, just any minute now after the military personnel parade, we will start to see that big, heavy military hardware roll across Red Square. What are you most looking forward to seeing today? What's the highlight for you?
I'm sure we are going to see some new pieces of hardware, and President Putin spoke about this in his address to the nation, which he made 2 months ago. And we are going to see this new aircraft of 5th generation. We are going to see also the interceptor fighters MiG-31 equipped with a lethal weapon, which is called Kinzhal, or dagger in English. I'm sure it's going to be very spectacular.
And it's not just all the newest and latest hardware. There's also some historical hardware as well, isn't there?
Well, traditionally, the parade of the hardware will start with the legendary T-34 tank, which fought on the battles of the Great Patriotic War.
Looking forward to seeing that. And then there's always a lot of questions over whether this military hardware is real or not. Perhaps we can get to that later. Let's go back to the parade and watch the last of the military personnel march across central Russia, central Moscow.
This year, the Academy is celebrating its centennial. The 331st Guards Parachute Kostroma Regiment is led by hero of Russia, Colonel Vladimir Seliverstov.
Well, we've got the parade covered from all angles. Igor Zhdanov has a bird's eye view of the parade. Igor, what can you see?
Well, I can see and very much hear all the military vehicles that are now, they have started their engines and they are ready to rumble towards the Red Square. So really the tanks that were standing towards the front of the column have already begun their movement apparently, and so we can smell the fumes from all the engines. More than 100 vehicles are taking part in this year's parade, and among them are some veterans like the T-34 tank, which de facto, well, all but won the Great Patriotic War for the Soviet Union. It was sort of a victory tank. We will also see some of the newer, of course, hardware. Some of that hardware has not been flaunted ever before. Among those are unmanned drones, for example, which can do both reconnaissance and actual bombing missions. They can do that. Also snowmobiles with like military snowmobiles with machine guns mounted on them. We will also see some of the new armored personnel carriers and AMRAT vehicles, tank support units like the one Terminator. It already took part in the Syrian campaign. Those vehicles did participate in the Syrian campaign, and this year, for the first time, they will be shown at a Victory Day parade. So the engines are working, and we're just waiting for the column to start their movement, which could happen any second. Really, the driveway has been cleared from everyone, because the crews of these vehicles they participate in the parade, but of course they wanted to see those parts of the parade that they are not part of. So there are flat screens across the Tverskaya Street, and they were standing on the driveway watching the parade on the Red Square. Now they have cleared out, and so everything has been made ready. Everything is ready for these vehicles to begin their movement. We can see red tail lights on some of those vehicles. They also have been lit up. Also a sign that everything is ready, and really a beautiful day here in Moscow. We can see this is one of Russia's main streets, and a lot of people who own flats here. We can see like literally dozens of people standing on the balconies watching the parade from the comfort of their apartments, I should say. We can see all sorts of folk here. There's an elderly lady on the balcony just across the street, and whole families next to her. So everything is ready, and we're waiting for the column to start their movement.
So Igor, it seems you're not the only person with the best seat in the house for the parade today. Well, you were following the rehearsals of this parade and the days preceding. You got to ride in one of those tanks, didn't you? Why don't you tell us about that experience?
Well, it was pretty incredible. It took almost half of the day, really. So we had a chance to actually ride with the column of the military hardware. We were riding one of the AMRAT vehicles, it's Typhoon. It's known under the name of Typhoon. It's a vehicle basically also being shown. It's one of the modifications designed specifically for urban warfare, and it will be shown. It will be featured at this year's parade for the first time. It is known as a very well protected vehicle. It is designed to absorb explosive damage from landmines, and its armor is so powerful that its hull will deflect even armor-piercing bullets. Not all of them, of course, but some types. Of course, it was the vehicle that we were riding, and the people inside, the military guys inside, were really excited about getting this vehicle as one of their main means of transportation. Now, also, again, we saw the new drones that will be unveiled. It is the first official public showing. I mean, for the first time, we saw Russia's unmanned drones. Those drones at the first rehearsal. It was actually the first time when they were shown to the public. And this parade is the first time they will be shown officially. They were developed as reconnaissance aircraft, but eventually they were redesigned to carry bombs as well. Now, I've already mentioned the Terminator tank support unit, which already participated in full combat. It did show itself in its full combat role in Syria, helping out the Syrian government forces in their fight against ISIL. But of course, these new additions are only part of the column of the hardware parade. There are also older ones like the S-400 missile defense system, which is also in Syria, which is also defending Russian air bases, Russian air bases and Russian troops, Russian military police in Syria. It will be shown as usual as well. You can hear them honking, which probably means they're about to begin their movement. And right below us are the Grad missile systems, Typhoon APCs, which are used by the Russian military police. Tanks in the front, and now we can finally see some of the vehicles moving just behind me. So finally, this part of the parade has officially kicked off. So let's just enjoy the view that we have from this vantage point and check out. And I think Daniel Hawkins, my colleague, will be meeting those tanks, those vehicles on Manezhnev Square as they rumble onto the Red Square. So back to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Igor. So much detail there. Thank you very much. Now, our correspondent Igor seems very excited about this Terminator tank, the robot tank. Is this going to be one of the highlights for many people, do you think?
Yeah, this Terminator, this specially designed vehicle to support tanks on the battlefield, especially in the warfare which goes on in the city. It has a very powerful gun, very powerful weapons, and is capable to destroy those who would like to destroy the main tank force of the advancing troops. So, yeah, we are very much excited to see it on the line.
Incredible. Let's take a full screen shot now of the parade and show our viewers what's happening right now.
The military band is now leaving Red Square to give room to the armored column. The combined military band of the Moscow garrison provides the musical accompaniment for the parade.
Военные музыканты исполняют более 40 военных маршей и музыкальных произведений, выстроенных в строго определенном порядке.
Hey, let's cross to our correspondent Daniel Hawkins now, who's right outside the Kremlin. Daniel, talk us through the impressive view.
Certainly a good seat I've got in the house, Nikki. Certainly seems to be the loudest one. I can barely hear you with all this military hardware rumbling past. As you can see behind me, the column began traveling, headed by the T-34, the granddad of Russian Soviet tanks that was carrying the historical Red Army, red communist banner, the victory banner. That's been followed by personnel carriers with paratroopers and military police inside them as well. Followed, as you can see, and now behind me, I believe, by Armata T-14 tanks, one of the latest tanks in the Russian army. Truly astonishing noise here, Nick. I can barely hear myself speak. I hope you can hear me. As this weaponry rumbles past onto Red Square, it gets heavier and heavier from armored personnel carriers. The tanks rumbling past me right now. Later on, we're going to see air defense systems, S-400 missile defense systems, followed by ballistic missiles. The noise is quite incredible. Nicky, I do hope you can hear me in the studio. I've never really been in such a loud environment before. It's like having 2 or 3 football matches going on around you all at the same time. Quite an incredible sight here. These are the paratroopers going past me right now in their armored personnel carriers. 6 or 7 of those vehicles, followed up by the heavy artillery, the heavy tanks coming through behind me right now. And in the distance, Just in a couple of minutes' time, we're going to see some self-propelled howitzers moving, making their way past as well, followed by those Buk missiles and S-400 missiles as well, the ones that are currently based in Syria. One of the highlights, of course, will be the Kinjal missile and the other intercontinental missiles that will be driving past here today. Nikki, I'm going to get back to the studio now because the noise really is deafening, but I hope you can appreciate some of the sights we can see here today.
Thanks for that, Dan. So our correspondent Daniel there struggling to speak over the sound of those Soviet tanks. Let's go to Rory Souchet. It seems a bit quieter where you are, Rory. What's happening now?
Oh, you could not be more wrong, my dear Nikki. Here they come. Here they come now. It is the big boys and their big toys. The massive tanks now starting to roll across the iconic cobbles of Red Square. The Armata tank is in the mix of them. The armoured personnel carriers that have been totally retrofitted and upgraded for their current challenges in this global climate that we live in today. Armoured personnel carriers, totally updated. The big tanks, absolutely enormous. The stones of Red Square, my feet, the vibrations, it makes you think there's some sort of seismic activity underneath the Kremlin, some sort of vast tectonic movement here. Now, as the tanks continue to come this way, and please, I ask for your forgiveness if you can't hear me properly, as the tanks come this way, they'll be backed up by the big missile silos, the big Triumph S-400 system. It can identify 36 targets simultaneously. Look at the plumes of diesel coming off these tanks. That's the Armata. These are the big ones here. That's the Terminator BMPT right there. That's the Terminator. Oh, and everything is just shaking out here. It's just a remarkable place to be. I'm so honored to be here on Red Square, marking 73 years since the victory of the great patriotic war over that of Nazi Germany. I was just talking briefly about the S-400 Triumph system, which is basically known as the world's #1 missile defense system. It can operate with a range of 400 kilometers, but it can also operate at an altitude of 30 kilometers, meaning the S-400 can take out targets literally above our stratosphere. So as we continue our live coverage here on RT International, V-Day across Russia and the world, marking 73 years since the defeat of Nazism and fascism. Amid all the noise and chaos and the grandiose tanks here, back to you in the studio.
Thanks for that, Rory. Your excitement is palpable. We feel like we're really there. Thank you so much for that. We'll come back to you later. But now, let's go to our correspondent, Murad Gastiev, who's on the Kremlin walls right now. Murad, what can you see from that spot?
Well, I can tell you this, the vibrations Rory was talking about, we can feel them all the way up here, 20, 30 meters above ground. And I've got to say, we've got by far the best view. We can see it all, a bird's eye view perspective. And of course, we're expecting the aviation to come any moment now. I was here last year when they unfortunately cancelled the aviation part, the jets, the helicopters because of bad weather. But this year, no such thing. Their arrival is imminent. In fact, a few meters away from us, all the airmen, the generals of the aviation who are coordinating the flight paths, making sure everything goes swimmingly. And they expect a big show, more jets than ever this year. And some of them are going to be new. We'll see the Tu-160, the Swan, the strategic bomber. We'll see the Tu-95, the famous bears flying over the Kremlin, over this parade ground. The Tu-22s, various jets, MiG-29, Su-30s, the best of Russian aviation. But we'll also be seeing the Su-57, Russia's next generation stealth fighter, which will be flying over the Kremlin for the first time. We'll see other weapons as well, the Kinjal missile complex, which is very new, a new missile, hypersonic, that flies 3 kilometers a second, unveiled by Vladimir Putin just recently. All of that, as I say, imminent.
Thanks for that. That's Murad Gazdiev. Seems to be a battle of the best views amongst our correspondents there on Red Square. Looking like there's a green light for that military aircraft today, according to our correspondent. Looking at the blue skies, looking like it's all going to go well. So looking forward to that too. Let's give our viewers a full screen shot of the parade now and take a look at that exciting military hardware.
Formation of the S-400 Triumph anti-aircraft weapons system, led by Major Andrei Chepenko. No foreign air defense system has been able to match the capabilities of the S-400. It is capable of destroying not only all existing aerospace attack weapons, but also newer generations of weapons that are still under development. For the first time on Red Square, Uran-6 mine-clearing robots and Uran-9 fire-support unmanned ground combat vehicle, Korsar and Katran unmanned aerial vehicles are displayed. The system has been successfully tested.
Well, given us a play-by-play as that military hardware rumbles across Red Square is Rory Souchet. Back to you, Rory. What's happening right now?
Well, if you can see me and hear me amid the plumes of diesel smoke that's pouring off these enormous weapons of war, we've really got the big guns that have been cruising across Red Square now for the past few minutes. I don't know if you caught them a moment ago, the military hardware of the Arctic part of the Russian Federation. Huge white Caterpillar tracks, massive white radar systems. Russia letting the world know essentially that it has got its weapons of war positioned in, well, some of the most important geopolitical realms of our current political climate. The armored personnel carriers now continuing to come over at Red Square. We've had the Triumph S-400 pass over that, by the way, many countries in the world are trying to get their hands on the S-400. China already getting early components for the S-400. Saudi Arabia is trying to buy it. Turkey is trying to buy it. Many other countries in the Middle East and Central Asia want the Russian S-400 Triumph missile defense system. Incoming now, an absolutely enormous intercontinental ballistic missile atop that truck just behind me now, surrounded by other upgraded, renovated and juiced up armored personnel carriers here. Look at the size of that. My only question is, how on earth does he park that thing? Oh! We've got robot drones going across the cobblestones, going under the tanks. We've got cameras on zip wires going above Red Square. And boy, oh boy, what a sight today here on the iconic Red Square, the 73rd anniversary of the victory over Nazism. Back to you, Nikki.
Thanks, Rory. Indeed, how does he park that thing? Sergei, some people might be watching this wondering whether all of this military hardware is the real deal. Is it?
It is. No dummies here. These are, as Rory said, these are the toys for serious men. So, and all of them are not dummies, they're real things.
Wow, that's quite impressive. Let's go back to Murad Gazdiev now, who's on the Kremlin wall. Claims he's got the best view. Let's see what he can see from now.
Способный поднимать в воздух до 20 тонн груза в сопровождении 4 многоцелевых вертолетов.
Hi Murad, it's Nikki in the studio. Talk us through the view.
Nikki, there's a slight delay, Nikki, but you can see it for yourself here. Come the helicopters. The helicopters are the first wave of the aviation, flying in formation. 4 together, 4 different helicopters. We have the Mi-20s, the Mi-28s, Cobras, attack helicopters for now, transport helicopters. There's a thunderous roar here. I don't know if many of our viewers have been near helicopters, but you can feel it through your body, the reverberations. Immediately after the helicopters coming in, we have the jets, refuelers, and I believe those are interceptors. I can't quite make out what they are from here, but the MiG-29s, I believe. No, that's the 260, the White Swan, as it's come to be known, surrounded by 4 222s. They're also strategic bombers, again flying in formation. Behind them, refuelers, Ilyushin aircraft that refuel other aircraft in air. Behind those, we have the Bears, the 295 MS, famous around the world, still ancient but still working, still flying, still functional. The 295 MS, Bears as NATO has come to call them. I'm not 100% sure whether you get the sheer size of these aircraft through, you know, a camera lens, but they're enormous. Sometimes defy reason, logic. How on earth do things that big fly? And a 160 following a refueler. Coming in behind them, we have the MiG-29s, I believe. We'll come a little closer. It's harder to make out with the smaller aircraft. The MiG-29s, I believe, again piloted by some of Russia's best aerobatic pilots. Usually every year it's the same people that are flying these, but immediately behind them we have Su-24s. Su-24s, if I'm not very much mistaken. The Su-24s, and I believe those are the Su-30s. The Su-30s this year are carrying the Kinjal missiles, new hypersonic missiles unveiled by Vladimir Putin just recently. These are missiles that fly at 3 kilometers a second, capable of defeating any anti-missile weapons currently fielded by any country on Earth, including Russia. But we're waiting for the Su-57s, Russia's next generation aircraft. The new stealth aircraft that have been in development for many years now, which are intended to replace many of Russia's older jets in a variety of roles, be it intercepting, dogfighting, strategic, tactical, bombing, capable of carrying Russia's newest weapons, including the Kinjal missiles. And that is one of the two larger formations. Su-30s, I believe.
В составе самолетов Су-30СМ и МиГ-29 СМТ. Ведущий группы полковник Андрей Алексеев.
And the traditional last line, the last line that sprays a Russian flag over the parade ground, over the red square. Oh, it's a little blurry at the back there, but that's the Russian flag, all right. And again, all of what you just saw is being coordinated by officers, by airmen, just a few meters from us. Obviously, for operational security, we can't show them, but there are plenty of generals here, and judging by the smiles on their faces, that went according to plan.
Авиационным комплексом «Кинжал». Ведущий группы полковник Сергей Осадич. торжественное выступление военнослужащих 154-й.
As the colours of the Russian flag are sprayed across Moscow sky there, that marks the end of the air show. And some people might be wondering why, what is the significance? Why is it important to roll out all of this military hardware? But today, you know, Victory Day is not just a somber day. It's not just about remembering those who we lost and honouring those, but it's also about patriotism, isn't it?
Well, I would say there are many factors to do that. First of all, to demonstrate to the people that the country is reliably protected from any outside aggression. Besides that, the money of the taxpayer is correctly used for this kind of equipment, and it's not just wasted in vain. And of course, the patriotic feeling is a very important factor to do this. And it's part of the national tradition. We are not threatening anybody. It's just for us and for those who are interested.
Yeah. As President Putin said in his opening speech, it's also the importance of ensuring world peace for the future as well. And I think showing off the military hardware like they do every Victory Day gives a sense of security to the people of Russia, especially those who felt the impact of the Second World War firsthand. Well, let's go to our correspondent, very excitable correspondent, Rory Souchet now, who's on Red Square. Rory, can you hear me?
Yeah, Nikki, it's pretty darn difficult not to be excited when you have such military might being paraded right in front of you. I still can't feel my feet. The vibrations across Red Square have just been absolutely historic for me, certainly. The jets overgoing just a moment ago, Illusions, Sukhois, MiG-29s, MiG-31s, the Acrobats, but more importantly, not one Kinzhal missile, but two Kinzhals, translated as the dagger that flies 10 times the speed of sound. And if it's incoming, nothing can stop it, and even at that speed of 10 times the speed of sound, it can still outmaneuver any incoming deterrent. So that was a pair of Kinzhal missiles on a pair of Superjets that just flew over Red Square. I must admit, I've never seen them in the flesh, and that was really quite spectacular to see the new Kinzhal dagger that, of course, was debuted by the Russian President Vladimir Putin on March the 1st during his Federal Assembly address. So clearly the parade winding down here on the iconic Red Square. But what an incredible day it's been. Of course, you show your respects, you pay homage to those affected by the Great Patriotic War, but you also take a moment to celebrate the mostly time of peace that we live in today. But you also understand Vladimir Putin's speech when he says, given this current geopolitical climate, Russia is prepared for dialogue and prepared to work with its professional partners. But what a day it's been. What a day for me, and what a day for all of us here on RT International.
Thanks for that, Rory. We're going to watch the parade now as it closes up. Thank you for your contribution today. That marks the end of this year's Victory Day. I'm very honoured to have Sergei Lebedev in the studio with me to talk us through this parade. I'm very grateful that you're here with me. What was the highlight for you at this year's parade?
First of all, the speech of the president. He pronounced more distinctly the role of the Russian army in defeating the Nazi Germany. It's for the first time he made such a strong accent that the main burden of the war was on the shoulders of the Russian army and that of the Russian people. And the demonstration of this new military hardware is also very impressive. Rory said it was a tremendous sound and tectonic shocks coming on the Red Square. I can tell you that those tracks were specially equipped with a rubberized padding not to destroy the asphalt. If that was without the padding, that would be a completely different picture.
Wow, wow. And that's been going on for 73 years, of course, so that asphalt has seen quite some...
Yeah, definitely.
Quite some action. A lot of people overlook the contribution that the Soviet people made to the Second World War. They were hit the hardest, weren't they?
Oh, definitely. Nobody lost so many lives. As we said, it was about 26 million people. And actually, the Soviet Union fought against the so-called United Europe, because actually most European countries were under Hitler, and many European divisions were also part of the Wehrmacht force.
Looking at our screens now, we can see President Putin. What is he doing right now?
Well, actually, he is greeting the commanders of the military districts who were in charge of preparing the troops and who are in command of those forces.
I think something that Rory touched upon as well is that during his opening remarks, President Putin touched upon the state of world global politics at the moment, which perhaps made this particular parade this year more poignant. He talked about the need for dialogue, the need to ensure the peace in respect of our previous generations and our ancestors. Also present at the parade, I noticed the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, so I'm sure they will have more to talk about as the day goes on. What should we expect now? Is Putin going to, does this officially end the parade? What do we see now?
Yeah, actually this is the final ceremony, and this is just the formal procedure. Again, they're reporting to him, just introducing themselves, shaking hands, and the president is thanking them for excellent presentation and for excellent training of troops.
And usually at every parade we see people who have come along to watch the parade, who have brought pictures of their ancestors who fought in the Second World War or who died in the Second World War. Is that something we're going to see later?
Yeah, it's going to follow up the parade. The so-called Immortal Regiment procedure will follow up, and thousands of hundreds of people will carry the portraits of their grandfathers, fathers and grandmothers who perished, who died and who fought in the Second World War, in the Great Patriotic War of 1941-1945.
And this is perhaps the most touching and moving part of the day.
Definitely.
Let's listen in live now, shall we?
Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий, командир парадного расчета военно-морского политехнического института, полковник Свесин. Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий, командир 336-й отдельной гвардейской Белостокской, орденов Суворова Александра Невского, бригада морской пехоты Балтийского флота, гвардии полковник Лазуткин. Здравия желаю. Наш Верховный Главнокомандующий, командир 61-й отдельной Киркенесской краснознаменной бригады морской пехоты Северного флота, полковник Лазуткин.
Товарищ Верховный Главнокомандующий, командир парадного расчета военнослужащих курсантов Военного университета Вольского института материального обеспечения, Военной академии связи, полковник Буков.
Let's cross live now to our correspondent Daniel Hawkins, who's watching the parade and also has been personally touched by the Second World War too. Talk us through your day, Daniel.
Nikki, the parade is all but finished, at least the main part. The infantry, the servicemen and women, the tanks, artillery, the flyby for many perhaps was the highlight. For many, though, it is just the start of one of today's main events, the Immortal Regiment you were just talking about there. An estimated 700,000 people will take part in that throughout Moscow, the Moscow region, carrying portraits and photographs of their loved ones, of their family members who fought, and many of whom died in the Great Patriotic War, as it's known here in Russia. Many Russians were affected by this. Pretty much every family had ancestors that had some contribution. My great-grandmother was a military surgeon at the time during the Battle of Moscow. My great-grandfather fought and died in Stalingrad. One of the key battles, of course, this year is the anniversary of that battle, as well as the centenary of the founding of the Red Army. as much as this is about being a showcase of military hardware, of military strength, ultimately this is very personal, a very somber, a very touching topic for all Russians, and the veterans, of course, here are the main heroes of the whole thing. There's fewer and fewer of them, sadly, every single year, but they're the ones that take the place of honor on the VIP stand near the Kremlin, near the mausoleum. Millions of human stories, just a drop of which we've managed to encompass in our reports. This is the story of one lady Rosa Gabrielan, who escaped to the front when she was just 16 years old. Quite hard to comprehend that in today's day and age, how somebody so young can achieve such things. She escaped to the front when she was just 16 to become a nurse and help wounded fighters there. We managed to get some of her story. Let's take a listen now.